You're listening to the Paracasual Destiny Podcast. Hey, thanks for tuning in to episode 13 of the Paracasual Destiny Podcast. I'm Sooltime, and I'm joined by Salliebug. Salliebug, are you there? I hear you, I think.
I had my YouTube open and forgot to mute the computer, so I apologize for that. But
I'll
yes,
take that
I'm
as
here.
a yes, yeah. Greenstego, are you there?
I am here.
He is here. Yes, he is. Welcome.
Thank you.
How was your week, Stego? Did you have a good week? Busy?
I don't want to go into details, but it was. I'm still here.
No pressure.
And that's all that needs to be said about that right now.
Well, I'm so glad you're here on the podcast too. You're definitely the anchor, so to speak. No pun intended, because our host is called Anchor as well. Anchor.fm is our podcast host.
Do you have Monday off, Daniel?
No, I do not. That was moved to November 3rd.
Boo.
Oh, that is a bummer. I am so sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have election day off, I suppose. That feels like it's more worth having a holiday.
Right, yeah, definitely. I'm not quite sure why Election Day isn't. You know, I just feel like if the goal is to get everybody to get out there and vote, then everybody should. It should be a holiday so that except for, of course, the people who are manning the voting booths and such.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Reading the mood here.
It's odd.
I'm guessing you didn't have much time for Destiny, Stego, or did you?
Oh, no, I am excited to try some Festival of Lost today, but
Us too.
Haven't played.
Yeah.
I have played a little video games, but not Destiny this week.
Right.
It was in our like we kept saying, okay, let's get on for a little bit, and I just didn't have the mental or physical energy.
This week was a full pull for us. This week. Yeah. Big teaching week for us.
Yeah. So, but again, like you, Daniel, looking forward to delving in. I've been kind of living the Destiny life vicariously through Twitter, which isn't always a good thing.
Yeah, but
it keeps your foot in the door.
It does, and if the experience this week has been Bungie, I think that the Cypher drop rates are not so great, and then over the course of the week they do improve that, then maybe that's okay that I missed the first few days of Festival.
Right.
Wow, that's putting it in such a tender, nice, non-aggressive way. I like that. Keeping positive about it. You're saying that you're mentioning the, what is it called? Cypher decoder rate is not very good. Funny Bones saying he's rolling in Cypher decoders here this morning. And then he says 4. Right. I wonder how that 4 translates into hours of play at this point. But in all honesty, I have been avoiding. I was not encouraged to get on based solely on the reports of the drop rate of those things. And I kind of in the back of my head been playing this game long enough to know they are going to do something about it. And indeed they have, not only once, but twice is my understanding. And I haven't even checked Twitter this morning. So maybe it's a third adjustment by the time our podcast has drawn to a close. Who knows? But like you, Greenstego, I think I'm looking forward to hopping on and taking the plunge into Festival of Lost. Decoder rate be damned. I'm going to go in there with a positive attitude, look at the triumphs, engage in the activity, go around and get my feet wet with the candy and with the decoders and just doing the Haunted Force again. I'm looking forward to just it being that time of year. You know, you associate this with tradition and all the other Halloween-y stuff that's going on.
It's trick-or-treating for adults. In a way.
I have 3 words to say about that. Dried fruit candy.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I'm looking forward to getting in. I think I did, if we're still kind of just talk about what we've done, I did get on this weekend. And
I did too, yeah.
Past weekend and finished, and I think I hadn't finished the Means to an End, but I did get on Monday night and just do that one thing, and possibly played a little bit with my granddaughter. I think I did, which is still extremely fun just to get on and have her perspective, her new guardian, excited for every loot box, like just random chests, and I got arms, and hold on, I need to see whether they boost me up in light, and just living that life. It's kind of fun. So I did do that this past weekend, and that was about it. It's my understanding, even though I haven't gotten on at all since reset, it's my understanding the new lore dropped. They've added like a continuation of that Means to an End.
Right. Another reason to get on.
Though, one of the things I do want to say is that completing that Means to an End, I'm pretty sure that was the only activity I did, because I have such limited time these days, that it was about the only activity I did that gives me a pinnacle drop, and yet another disappointment of not getting the class item. It's like I'm trying so hard to get to max light and just can't seem to get it to happen. And now that these pinnacle drops are way more of a trickle, I can't. Over the summer, I was able to do, 4 or 5 activities a week, and that's why I'm so close. But then once my work started and my time is a little bit limited, is way more limited, I usually only get to 1 or 2 pinnacle activities a week that allow me for a pinnacle drop, and I still can't seem to get that class item.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and what sucks about that is you're not going to be able to get, by the end of the season, you're not going to be able to get other class items up to 1060 because of that. It's going to be too late. It's already too late. Yeah.
Right. And you get so close to where the light's going to be going up anyway. Like on November 10th, it'll be part of the light leveling. So it's almost like, is it really even worth
What's
it
the
at
point?
This point?
Yeah.
Right. Because I know I'm going to be having to go, redo that light grind. So. It is what it is. It's the way Bungie has decided they are going to do that leveling thing, and
RNG.
We talked a little bit.
RNG.
We've talked a little bit about it in the past, and so I don't want to go into a whole lot about it, but definitely for a casual player who possibly has that as a goal, is to get up to top light. I do wish there was a little bit more of a smart RNG, like at
maybe
least just say
maybe last 2 weeks of the season boost the probability of it, or
that's a positive. And we're not there yet. We're not at the last 2 weeks.
That's true.
Or just say, I don't know. I don't have a response to it. I don't have an answer to it. It's
how about doing away with RNG leveling? Make leveling a product of the time you invest in the game. instead of
Have
having it
smart
be random.
leveling. Yeah. I mean that would
Not
be
even
it, but you
smart
don't want
leveling.
the grind to. But for I'm trying to keep that balance, and I think Bungie and Destiny 2 as well is trying to keep that balance of not having the hardcore players have everything and be the max
They
life
level
within
up the first
week
day
or
anyway,
two
though.
Anyway.
They level up the first day, the first 6 hours. They're like ready for that raid to drop, you know? So it's really just affecting people who don't have a lot of time to get on. It makes it a pain point. That's my perspective on it, and yeah, there's probably some things they can do. We'll see. I'm really optimistic about Beyond Light.
I mean, they're in addition to some other the TWAB and other things that they dropped. They're giving us trickles of information. I really feel like there's a huge kind of revamping altogether of like a lot of these systems that are in the background. And this leveling is one of them. So I'm kind of feeling optimistic that.
Cautiously optimistic?
Cautiously optimistic, exactly. So, and with that being said, maybe we should get into kind of like what has dropped from Bungie this week. We got another trailer.
We did. We got another trailer. I'd like to play it. I mean, I don't know how much we want to get into this, the specifics of it, but I would like to play it for the folks at home. So let me see if I can defy my age and get to playing this. Wow, I've got so many things open here. I still haven't figured out this live streaming thing. TBH, if you're not a me. Here we go. I'm gonna play it.
Guardian, crush them. Triple down. Relax, Guardian. You're scaring them.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a super definitely intended to hype trailer that we got.
Oh, absolutely.
It's all about the hype, right?
So we kind of talked about this behind scenes on like, did we want to go into the details of like all these new weapons and armor that they just kind of threw at us there? And I think we decided just with everything else that they have that they've dropped this week that we're going to hold off on that one.
Well, I just have to ask Greenstego if anything stood out there that got him a little bit excited.
That's kind of hard to say because all of them are standouts.
Yeah.
Basically, watching that trailer, I want to take every single exotic weapon and armor piece that I have and throw them in the trash.
And I feel like I may be wrong here, but I felt like some, especially like towards the end when they were showing those red and blue weapons, that those were potentially even just legendary weapons. I think they were just trying to show that there's going to be legendary weapons that will also have stasis.
Right.
But so I don't know, like that. It could be that there are going to be exotic weapons that also have stasis, but I'm thinking that there's going to be some legendary weapons. It's like it's going to be an added element of weapons.
Oh yeah, I don't
know. I
would be surprised if we don't get a legendary energy weapon that does stasis as its element.
So I am very curious about the No Time to Explain. Of course, No Time to Explain has had quite a journey through the Destiny universe.
Right.
Right.
Started off as a rare, the rare blue one.
Right. As the blue weapon that the Exo Stranger gave us at the end of the initial vanilla campaign.
It was underwhelming as a sort of final, cherry on the sundae.
Kind of an underwhelming reward, because at that point you already had like
legendary,
other weapons that were like way more exciting about it, exciting than it. So, after that, I think it was it in the DLC drop the following year? So the Taken King. Is that right?
That they released No Time to Explain.
When No Time to Explain made a reappearance as an exotic. Was that Taken King?
I forget. It's all one.
I'm pretty sure it came out. I'm pretty sure that's when it came out, but I could be wrong.
Right. Sounds about right.
Yeah, but this could be Punky Brewster all over again.
It could be a Punky Brewster moment. So, anyway, I'm curious about it because it had that little dark ball that shows up almost like that same kind of helper that you get in the Warlock Rift in the Arc Warlock Rift.
Yeah, Arc Buddy.
Yeah,
little Arc Buddy.
Little Arc Buddy.
Had a little buddy,
so it looks like you're getting a little Darkness Buddy. So I'm curious. I'm very curious.
Yeah, to me it looks like, because it functionally, or well, I guess in practice, to me it feels like it's going to play very similarly to Outbreak Perfected, in that with more repeated hits you'll get additional damage dealing perk, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see how it feels a little different, because it feels darker, obviously, because it's stasis aligned. I don't know if it's going to be a stasis or a kinetic weapon.
Well, and we also know that that gun has a history with the Exo Stranger, and the Exo Stranger is not a guardian. There have been some other trailers that have dropped that are kind of giving some little bit of hints of possibly where she comes from, and it's her gun. So I'm curious and excited about it. So that, and obviously it's always fun to get your hands on new guns and new exotics that give you kind of new ways to use your new and existing.
I'm excited about every single one of them.
So, I mean, how can you not be excited? The only thing I'm not, the only thing I'm hesitant about is that I'm super excited about all of this and have so very little time.
I know.
To really spend with the game right now, and that for me is sad. But we do have Monday off, which is exciting, and hopefully by then I will be well rested enough to spend some time in the game and get some Festival of the Lost done. I wanted to talk a little bit about that before we delve into some other things that came out in the TWAB, in that there was this whole kind of like Twitter controversy about these cipher drop rates. And, you don't have to have a cipher decoder to do the Haunted Forest. It's
correct.
It's just an added piece. So I feel like it was really designed more for like the hardcore players who are playing a lot. So you play a lot of the game, you'll have 3 or 4 ciphers. Then you go in and do a run of the Haunted Forest. There's 5 chests there, but maybe you can open 3. And it's for people who do that. Let's see if we can get the best roll on these 2 guns. It feels like that's what it was mostly made for. So for me, it's like, I don't necessarily need to have 5 cipher decoders just to go in and do the Haunted Forest. You could just go in and do the Haunted Forest. There is a chest at the end of the Haunted Forest just for doing it. You don't need a cipher decoder to finish.
But what do you get? I'm hesitant to go anywhere here, having not even tried Festival of the Lost yet. So I'm going to reserve my comments.
I'm pretty sure you're still
after
getting
I've done it.
The candy and maybe the chocolate strange coins. You're still getting stuff that will give you progress towards those 3 exotic pieces that Ava has: the ship, the sparrow, and the ghost, the mummy.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to diving into it anyway. So
anyway,
let's move on to the Burn Bright New Light. Let's move on.
All right.
Yeah, and this is particularly interesting to, I think, people who don't have a lot of time but love the game, is and for new and casual players, this new approach to the new player experience, right? Over the last year, there's been a lot of great feedback about the new player experience in Destiny 2. Currently, players are given a single mission to become acquainted with some basic gameplay. We just went through this with our granddaughter. And this led to some confusion, as many players didn't know exactly where to start. Yes, indeed. I mean, the other thing was, Salliebug, do you remember how we had to verbally, because we can't see her screen when we're playing with her online, we had to verbally try to get her, okay, now open this, what does it say? Do you see if it says this anywhere, or hold the left trigger down? So even like veteran players trying to help a new player was difficult. Let me read on. This led to some confusion. Who's that robot that's meticulously cleaning an auto rifle? What do I do with these engrams? And what's a Zavala? The team has been working to restructure the on-ramp for Destiny 2, and today we'll be giving a small glimpse into the new light experience. Now, I know you were particularly excited about this, Salliebug. So starting November 10th, players will start in the same way that most of us all have. Ghost will be on the hunt for their guardian. They stumble upon you, blah, blah, blah. What's different now is that you won't immediately find a ship. Rather, you stumble into, ready for it, another guardian in the wild. And so this is our first look at Shaw Han. And I have a feeling Shaw Han's going to be echoed throughout the schoolrooms of all the children who begin as New Light players. he's going to be very popular. And he's on a mission with his fire team to investigate what the Hive are up to in the Cosmodrome. He'll show you the ropes and help you find your way among the gameplay and systems of Destiny 2. Now, I quipped, when I first heard about this, I thought, man, they're going to have to hire a huge task force at Bungie to control Shah Han. Each Bungie dev would be controlling, or playtester would be controlling them. But then Salliebug pointed out it's probably going to be an NPC, right?
Yeah, I think it's not going to be
it's not going to be a live player on the other end.
Yeah, how could you have someone who's just like they don't have that, all those new players. Plus, it says right in there that, or it says later on in the document that we as veterans can do these same missions with that same Guardian.
Right, yeah. With the Cosmodrome coming out of the DCV, this gave us the perfect opportunity to overhaul our new player experience. For veteran players out there, this will be a stroll through memory lane. While the Plaguelands are strictly quarantined per Vanguard orders, you'll still be able to explore much of what you remember from the first days as a Guardian. I wonder, I was thinking about this. Oh, you get the spin metal, go through the moth yards. Good times, good memories. It'll be fun. And I think it would be cool if even veteran Guardians were given a little carrot to do this, just so that they know what the perspective of their fellow new players, new Guardians, the Kinderguardians, are going to experience. Maybe give us a little emblem, a little new light emblem for running through the ropes with Shah Han. What do you think?
I'm excited to do it. I really want to do it, and I'd like to go through it with Haley. I think it will help her get even more acquainted with the way things work in Destiny 2, and just how to better navigate your leveling system and how to do it. So I think she's pretty much gotten a lot of those resources through playing with us and so forth, and on her own, you just kind of learn it as you go, and she's smart, so she's picking it up. But I'm excited that they have listened to that feedback and have added this into the game. This is going to be especially good for like all of those new players that are getting it with Game Pass. So it's just free because they have it, and that it's because I feel like if you have someone who isn't like, how do I want to say it? It's like, so for people who actually go out and buy Destiny 2, they're curious about the game and they want to play it. But for like a Game Pass player, and I know it's free to play, but it's like also it's just like for those new light players who are like, maybe I'll give this is showing up in my feed. Maybe I'll give this a try, and then have this really confusing experience in the first hour or two, or like, I don't know. I kind of don't know which way is up. So you could lose some of your potential veteran potential players who would play a lot, I guess is the way I'm wording it.
I'm very excited about the new light experience. We've touched on this before in the pod, but the Red War, I feel like, was a lot more impactful for players who already experienced Destiny 1. I don't feel like it's a good launching point. And I feel like
it really
there wasn't really a good alternative for learning how to play Destiny 2. And I just feel like, for me, the Red War was so devastating because you finally get back like the tower, but there's still like, where's Ava? Where's Eris? What about the Vestian outpost? And we eventually like slowly reconnected with those characters, but it was that was part of it that was impactful for me as a player, as a guardian. And
right.
But not as impactful for
it-
somebody who didn't play D1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
good
love
point.
the tower. I love the tower.
We had a connection to it.
Yeah. And it was taken from us. And those players never really got to fall in love with it before it was destroyed.
Right, yeah.
Well, no, yeah, I mean, not only that, it's like I did that first Red War mission with my granddaughter, and the part in there where where you finally get to kind of like the main base of the tower where Zavala's there, and he says "Guardians" to me, and he like protects you under the bubble. She had no clue. Not only did she have no clue of like even how to navigate around to find him at that point, but that the big purple bubble that he had around him was something that you could get into and protect you. And other Guardians like us who've been playing knew that, but she, as a new light player, had no clue what was going on.
Yeah.
And that getting into that purple bubble was a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see how they.
So I'm
reward
excited for it. I'm definitely excited that they've revamped this, and hopefully this will be a better experience for these new players to have a better idea and to maybe have a little more of a connection with the Destiny world. I mean, obviously a sequel, that's going to be very hard to do. A sequel where new players don't necessarily have to have had a connection with the first one. I mean, that's hard to do because it is a sequel. It's like watching a movie as a sequel, but not watching the first one. You could be a little confused, you know?
Right. It's a challenge for the writers to include everyone.
It's definitely a challenge.
Do you want to move on to the next exciting piece of news, which is, I think, equally gratifying to see that something's being done in this area, and that is with armor mods, right?
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about modifications, right?
This, I gotta say, is probably, outside of like the hype of the new stuff, probably my favorite thing that I read this week.
Yeah. Me too.
Because the fact that they are taking away that affinity for which weapon you're holding and what affinity, I just feel like it really is valuing more. It is definitely opening up some options for those casual players who maybe only have one set of armor that they can fully master work.
Well,
so I'm excited.
Salliebug, you and I wanted affinity to go away in armor altogether. So this is a great step in that direction for us.
It's right. I feel it's definitely meeting us halfway, so to speak. I mean, and for the most part, I really only wanted that affinity to go away so that it didn't interfere with what weapons I could use. So that's exactly what they've done. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to let you and Stego continue this conversation.
Right. I think we should just talk about what affinity is to begin with, for those listeners who may not know how it works. When you get a piece of armor in Destiny, it has an elemental affinity. So right now it's either Arc, Solar, or Void. The armor has that affinity. And so that determines which mods you can actually put on the weapon, because there's mods that can only go on Solar armor. There's mods that can only go on Arc. There's mods that can only go on Void. And so if you're somebody who likes to explore and experiment with a bunch of different types of gameplay, you sort of are locked. You're at the mercy of having to have a piece of armor for each affinity if you want to experiment and try out all those things. What's happened is a lot of players have just gone with whatever's meta. So they've just got basically Void is my understanding that Void armor has, the grenade launchers and other meta stuff in it. So that's what people mostly go with. And if it's not Void, they just discard it. So that perpetuates the meta, which, as we know, that Bungie doesn't like that. So I think they saw that happening. And also, they noticed one of the other great things about this is when you remove the affinity, now you have 3 categories of mods. Well, first of all, what they're doing is all the weapon-oriented armor mods. This is reading from the TWAB. So hand cannon loader, fusion rifle, ammo finder, etc. have been changed to be any energy type. As a result of the above change, all arc charged with light mods now activate their second perk if you have any other arc mod equipped on the same armor piece, or if you have any other arc charged with light mod socketed in any other armor piece you're wearing. So what has happened is you've got now 3 times the amount of mods displaying. That's the problem with it, because I think, and Salliebug was saying before, she thinks maybe one of the design choices for making these things affinity based was so much would you wouldn't clutter up the screen with so many mods, so they split them into 3.
Right.
Yeah, I would say that the fix to that, personally, would be to do away with hand cannon loader and auto rifle loader and just replace those with the generic ones that already exist, rifle loader, small arms loader, and just keep those.
Well, here's what they have done. Here's what they are going to do. They might have gotten rid of those. I don't think it says it specifically here, but what they have done is, based on player feedback, and my own experience too, quite frankly, is those, you put on a hand cannon loader and you hardly notice it. You put on an enhanced hand cannon loader and you notice it somewhat, right? But still, people would double stack them, two enhanced hand cannon loaders, just to get some serious stuff going on. And they noticed that, and so what they've done to cut down on the mod population, since we're making them affinity free, so to speak, is that they've just made them all enhanced mods, or they're what's the word they use? Deprecate. They're just combining the regular and enhanced into one mod. And making it more effective, which I think streamlining the Armor 2.0 system like this is desperately needed. And it encourages people to put on more than one mod, say a hand cannon loader and a shotgun loader, socketed at the same time. And I think that's also going to encourage more experimentation with the mods. That's my take on it.
I'm excited for it. Like you had mentioned earlier, you and I have been saying this affinity thing needed to go away, because it just, for someone who doesn't have like many different, and I haven't really been able to get fully around the whole farming for different armor pieces, but now maybe, I don't know.
Out of all the games I've played, Destiny has the most convoluted system for deciding what to keep and what to get rid of. And it's like, do I keep this? You're looking at the stat roll, you're looking at its affinity, you're looking at what season it is, you're wondering, okay, it's plus or minus 2, so will I still be able to run the charge with light on that and run my fusion rifle loader that I like? It's and still have high intelligence on this piece. It's so convoluted that most times I just don't care. I mean, I'm just going to go with what I have. I'll put on my highest light gear and just go with that. I'm not gonna bother. So I think they're moving towards a system that's going to engage the player to experiment more, and to try to use different stuff and actually take the time to explore some of the mod options, because they'll make more of a difference. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. I think that too. And in addition to that, they're kind of rearranging mod sockets, which was a little harder to kind of decipher and what they were talking about. And maybe that part of that is because you and I, just like you just said, it's like, half the time you kind of just don't even care what you've got. So, but it seems like they're getting rid of seasonal mods altogether.
Well, that's the next part here. Raid mods they talk about. Starting in Season 12, The Last Wish, Guardian of Salvation, and the upcoming Beyond Light raid armors will now drop with a 5th dedicated armor mod socket that is exclusively for the mods related to the raid. I think this is a good thing. So Last Wish and Guardian of Salvation armor acquired prior to Season 12 will not have this. So in a way, it's a little bit sunsetty there, isn't it? But we'll still be able to use the mods related to that raid in the new Legacy armor mod socket. Okay. Oh, and this is interesting too. Anti-Taken mods, anti-Hive mods, anti-Fallen raid mods are all being... the anti-Taken mods for the Last Wish will only function in the Last Wish raid. And the other two mods, the anti-Hive and anti-Fallen mods for the Leviathan and Scourge, respectively, are being done away with, deprecated.
Deprecated.
Wow, they are deprecating.
They're
not to be confused with defecating.
It makes sense the way they worded it is just that it seemed like some of those mods really seem to be in other gameplay, kind of a have and have not sort of thing. It's like it became like almost like the new Galahorn. It's like, if you want to do this, get your anti-Taken bear. You need that anti-Taken mod. I noticed that got like in a lot of the content that I had researched to do the prophecy dungeon, which is amazing. They say, okay, get out your anti-Taken mod, and it's like, I don't think I have that mod, and it just made it that much difficult. But I think they wanted it to be that much harder, right? They didn't want you to be using. I think those mods were specifically designed to be used in the raids in which they dropped.
Right.
But they didn't have at the time, of course, hindsight's 2020, but they didn't have the foresight that those would be used in other parts of the game where you would be fighting those same enemy types.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
I'm in agreement. I agree that this was a good thing.
Yeah. And honestly, that 5th mod socket, what they say here, it makes it a more valuable reward, but also should compensate for the restriction on the usage of these raid mods with the ability to use that armor to craft your build both in and out of the raid, so it does double duty. That is very important especially if they're not going to get more generous, if they're not going to be more generous with masterwork materials.
Yeah. I mean, it absolutely is, because now it's like you don't have to use a particular mod socket to do the raid armor to do the raid mods at the expense of possibly some others. Of course, right now I would, because I have the legacy armor, but it looks like, I guess if you're willing to farm for, I don't know, when you dismantle an armor piece, and especially now that they have that whole affinity thing, it's like if you dismantle an armor piece and it is fully masterworked, you get a percentage of the materials that you put into it back. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, I mean, hopefully,
but certainly,
if you
certainly not enough to nearly master. Like, I don't think you could just
to
masterwork something else with what they give you. I think it's like 7
Exactly.
enhancement cores. So,
but if you have some,
it's not that great.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
I
that
don't know.
great.
I
You're gonna have to grind some
and
more.
Maybe they're going to be changing that as well. It's like
Yeah,
I said, we're
we'll
getting
see.
a trickle
We'll
of
see.
information, and
Right.
it sounds like they're starting to try to make this more accessible, especially for those more casual players. So one can hope that the economy will be a little different as well, and that your ability to masterwork a piece of armor, because like you said, they're kind of sunsetting this raid armor.
Right.
And so if you want to take the full benefits, especially of these new armor mod changes that they're making, you're going to want those newer
Sure. And then
armor pieces.
The TWAB gives a justification for removing the anti-hive and anti-fallen mods. And I do feel bad for our friends who worked really hard to get all those mods. But I am not shedding a tear for that being sunsetted, based on the reasons they're giving are very, very good reasons, typical sunset reasons for internally making the game better and easier to deal with. And I'm one of those people who wants to keep Bungie independent. I know there's a contingency of voices in the community who want them to team up with another huge mega developer, namely Microsoft, probably for nostalgic reasons as well. That, man, that's talk about amnesia. They just got independent of Activision not that long ago, and I feel like it was a huge step in the right direction for the franchise, honestly, and for Bungie as a company in the long term.
I'm not hearing that as much as you. It just might have to do with who I'm following or who Twitter
You're not following the right people.
Or who Twitter is deciding I need to. Was like, ooh, pay attention to this.
Yeah, they're telling you who to vote for.
Right. So I'm not seeing that as much. But I mean, I'm sure those voices are out there, but at least the people I follow and their tweets that show up in my feed when I look at it every now and again, it's not coming up as being like a big thing that I think there was some hype, and because there was a rumor going around that they were going to merge with Microsoft, just due to some other stuff that was going on, and I think it was mostly related to the fact that they teamed up to do Game Pass, that Destiny was going to be on Game Pass. But
yeah, so the combat mods, then they talk about what's going on with how you will be able to use season-specific mods in Armor going forward. All Armor 2.0 armor acquired during Seasons 8 through 11 have had their seasonal mod sockets replaced with a single unified legacy mod socket that can socket all Charged with Light mods, all Warmind Cell mods, all Nightmare Hunt mods, Amen. And the Last Wish mods and the Garden of Salvation. Man, oh my gosh. There's just not enough vault space otherwise, right? That's another issue.
But no, you
and
don't
this
have
is good.
Those mods aren't in your vault.
They are if you have to collect armor to cover all the bases.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's
and
true.
Now you no longer have to. That's so good. This is such a great little thing. This little paragraph right here, I love it. I really do love it. It's the right direction for armor and mods, I think.
Right. You and I we mentioned that just briefly before. It just seems like they're getting rid of seasonal mods altogether.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. That it's just what are they calling it? A combat mod socket instead?
Yeah. Yeah, an all-encompassing combat mod socket. I made that part up, but that's basically what's going on. We're kind of coming up on the witching hour here, and it might be time for a little bit of a coffee break, right? Are we ready for a coffee break here?
I think we are.
And then we'll go into our special segments, our lore segment and our Sounds of Destiny segment coming up. So this coffee break is brought to you by the Paracasual Destiny Podcast. We encourage everybody to choose wisely when choosing your beans. Do we need a refill, or are we out of coffee, Salliebug?
There might be a tiny bit there if you want to go. And
if it's a drop, it's worth it.
Yeah, I still have like half a cup here, so I'm good. Why don't you take it?
Is everybody awake in chat? Wow, there's been some chat here going on in the background that I haven't been paying attention to. Level old exotics with modern light level. Yeah, I wish the collections, Fractious Heart says, I wish the collections was better utilized. Maybe have a special key from Zur each week that lets you pull one old item.
Ooh, that's a great idea.
That would repurpose Zur in an exciting way, I think.
Right. I mean, what's the point of having something in collections if it's locked out, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, so why do you have it? Because if you happen to be a collector and want to collect everything in the game? It seems kind of silly.
Especially with how deep the pockets of this game are.
Right.
It's basically impossible to collect everything.
Right.
But I think the whole point of collections came about when everything had static rolls to it, right?
Well, it released at the end.
That was part of that system when things were static.
Yeah, because they acknowledge the same thing that Sooltime said, that it's difficult to decide what to keep. And so they brought about the collections, but at the same time they brought random rolls. So it said you can get any of your old stuff. We're not telling you what to use, but you can get any of the old stuff from the collections, but also you're not going to want any of them because we got random rolls coming.
But no, you can't get items out if you have something in collections. It's like one thing. It's like, okay,
sorry, hold on, time out. I got a cat problem here. She's like playing the coffee break music. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Salliebug. Sorry.
So if you have a weapon and you really liked the roll of it, you should be able to archive it, like not necessarily just keep it in your vault, but archive it and then go and get it back out of collections, just as the roll that it is.
I agree.
Right? And I'm surprised that that's not actually the case. It doesn't make sense that it's not the case.
Good point.
And it's a good suggestion that Fractious Heart had, but it just it seems ridiculous, kind of, that you can't. I mean, it would take care of the vault space issue, and I think that was the initial. Yeah. At least in my opinion, I think that was the initial idea behind collections, was you can just put things in collections so you don't have to worry about having all of this stuff in your vault, so vault space won't be an issue. But then they found, and that was kind of something that came out again in year one of Destiny 2, and what they found was too many people really did like the random rolls idea rather than everybody just generically having the same thing. And
our vaults are full for those collectors. I love to hoard stuff. And I would stop doing that if it weren't for the odd time where I get out that rare void sidearm that's 750 that I haven't used in a while, and it's fun. It's fun to go digging through the trash and pull something out that you haven't used in a while. For me, that's fun, so I need a bigger vault so that I can be a hoarder.
And
right?
You also never know when a sandbox change is going to happen.
That's the other thing,
600 RPM auto rifles were nothing.
Yeah.
Before the most noteworthy, the biggest recent sandbox change. Before that, it was all SMGs. There was no reason to use an auto rifle over an SMG.
Right.
Now the case is
Right.
flipped. Now there's no reason to use an SMG because you would
Those auto
you should
rifles
just use an auto rifle.
Yeah. Right. And their auto rifles are way more stable and feel better. So yeah, it's like with the sandbox changes, and I like the sandbox changes because it has you kind of utilize different underused weapons from your vault. It's just I wish there was a way to deal with the vault, and my vault's really not that bad because I dismantled a bunch of armor saying, you know what, I can't play this armor game, so I'm just going to dismantle, a bunch of especially the planetary armor.
Sure.
A lot of the planetary armor and a lot of this other armor, I just came up with I can't do it, so I'm just
also the weapons that are sunsetting. That'll be easy to delete those, to dismantle the ones that can't go beyond 1060. It'll be
yeah. And
psychologically
I think that's the
justifiable
idea behind that too.
Sure.
I think people will see. I mean, and that's the thing with the sunsetting is unless you have because I do have a few weapons that are sunsetting that I still really, really enjoy using every now and again. And it's not just because they're sunsetting doesn't mean you can't use them in certain parts of the game. So,
yeah. I don't know.
You say,
I say because it's a vault space issue as well. And so I'm going to maximize and minimize the amount of time I need to do a build for endgame when we get together to do a raid.
Right.
I don't want to spend an hour. As it is, we already spend quite a bit of time preparing for a raid. I like to streamline that process, and that means having less in the vault. And if I know I'm not going to be using 1060 stuff most
of the time,
in the next raid, then I don't need to see it there. Honestly, I can do without it.
Yeah, you kind of want to have the weapons that are the high.
Right.
I mean, if you're going to use the most powerful, right? If you want to use the most powerful stuff in the raid or in the higher light level, you want to have some experience with those guns as well, right? So going back to the older ones, they're not going to feel the same because you haven't had the same amount of practice with them. Yeah, I get it.
And I'm one of those players who needs a psychological out to stop hoarding and get rid of stuff. I need a sort of a justification, just psychologically, so I feel good about it, because I am a hoarder, I am a collector, and I need a good reason to get rid of stuff.
I do like the fractious heart idea, though, that every now and again it would be nice to be able to pull something out of collections that you possibly dismantled and then regret. So,
right.
It's like a regret cipher.
So, Salliebug, are you ready to move on to the our Touch of Grimoire segment here?
I absolutely am ready.
All right.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So we're going to start off with something that Bungie dropped. Another thing Bungie dropped this week was some lore. And Stego, you're going to read that for us, right?
Zavala.
A Touch of Grimoire. They're not coming. Those words have finality when said aloud. An indirect farewell. Zavala can't quite see Ikora's expression in the muted reflection from his office window, but he can hear the disappointment in her voice. Beyond the glass, the city seems agnostic to the tempest of emotions. Ships soar through the night sky, lights glitter against the dark. The traveler looms silently. I know, is Zavala's belated reply. He watches as Ikora's reflection reaches toward him, but he's still surprised when he feels the weight of her hand against his shoulder. Commend them for their bravery, he says, confiding in her. But I'd prefer they be here to berate them for their foolishness. Ikora wordlessly squeezes Zavala's shoulder in response before standing beside him at the window. I remember when you and I felt invincible, when our ghosts felt invincible, when we could lay the foundation for the future with our bare hands. But now it's different. The list of names to memorialize gets longer by the day, she says, watching debris slowly orbit the traveler. We've said goodbye to too many. What was that? He asks, rising from his chair. Ikora watches Zavala's reflection in the glass, little more than a dim silhouette with glowing eyes. She smiles softly, and he can see a moment of peace and relief in her expression. A moment of faith, a moment of truth. It brought us together.
Wow, that was powerful.
Super powerful.
Yeah. Some good writing from the team there.
Yeah. So it started off as they're not coming. So we're thinking we're going to talk that, I thought with the initial, that initial title that we were going to go delve more into the ones who aren't coming, but this really became more about Zavala and Zavala's relationship with Ikora. So,
which we were wondering, is there maybe a little romance, or open the door a crack for a little romance there? We don't know. We'll have to wait until Valentine's Day.
Yeah. I don't think so. My interpretation was that it was like they're just solidly good friends.
You're right.
That they've been through too much together as vanguards, as protectors of Guardians and the city, and that through doing that for over a century, that it's just they have bonded from that, but not yeah. Fractious Heart says it seems platonic, and I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're a fire team, and they have been for over a century.
Right, absolutely. So, Zavala is, somebody asked, it dropped.
He's having a crisis of faith.
Website. He is having a crisis of faith. He's wavering, and then Fractious Heart says, could Zavala be corrupted from the Ahamkara? And that gets us right into, and my answer is yes. And that gets us right into another piece of lore. I feel like they're just connected, and there's nothing we can do. You can't have that one without this one, because it gives us a little bit of background of why. Because Zavala's always been very stoic and been our leader, and he's the head of the Vanguard. And he's always been cautious, right? He's always been the one to say, let's not jump in, without hesitating first, right? He's always been a little bit, be careful out there, right? He has that protector piece of it. And so just like a parent would say, be careful, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing to a child who's doing something that's a little scary or a little different. So you've got that going on, and so he's always been that protector, but this is beyond like being that protector. This is like his faith is wavering. And so we have another piece of lore, and this dropped with the Traveler's Chosen, when the Traveler's Chosen dropped. Did you, have you gotten Traveler's Chosen yet, Stego?
No, not yet.
Okay. So, it's not really, this isn't really a spoiler if you haven't gotten it, but this piece of lore is, particularly important in in the story. So would you mind reading that one as well? The lore that dropped when the Traveler's Chosen came out.
Traveler's Chosen. All we have left now is our faith. I push into my ossific den, and he is there. I see him looking over the side, toward his traveler, head bent. He is speaking softly, but I can hear him. Anyone who was listening could. Waits for a response, and I do as well. Tense, curious. He stands attentively, this loyal dog of a man. It is no time at all for me, but for him, the hours creep by in silence. I am ready to choke the voice of his traveler if it answers him, but there is nothing. He tightens his grip on the railing. I feel something shift inside him, and a new possibility presents itself. Again, I press against the sockets. The net creaks softly with my eagerness. Someone approaches, and he turns his back to his traveler. There's an exchange, obscured by the rubicund thrash. He is given reports. Hope bleeds from him. He gives the messenger a token of his faith. They accept it without understanding its meaning. He watches as they leave. There is a hollow place in his center. It is beautiful.
Wow.
I return warily. I do not see him, but I hear him. He speaks to all with a voice thick with grief. I must learn how far I have been set back. I reach to him tentatively. Strength. I push, and feel only sweet, soft rot. I am delirious with pleasure. It gave them no answers. It was a reflex, the spasm of dumb muscle. A song of joy rises within me. Now. And that's the end. Wow.
Yeah. So,
what's going to happen?
Who's speaking here?
Oh, I think that's Savathun.
So it's either Savathun or obviously one of her minions, but I think it's Savathun. Or so we need to talk a little bit about like how is Savathun watching Zavala, and it looks like she's using the Ahamkara skull that is hanging over Shax and his little area. So next time you're in the tower, go over to Shax's area and you'll see that Ahamkara skull. And there's a whole nother piece of lore, by the way, that I think I didn't want to make this too lore heavy. There's such a huge rabbit hole that you could go down with this as soon as you start talking about Savathun at all. But in the grips of the Great Hunt, there was a piece of lore that talks about Shax when Shax first gets that skull, and Zavala and Eris are there. And Shax has been known to sing one of Savathun's songs, and Eris also knows that song. So there's like some corruption that's going on, and there's a relationship between this Ahamkara skull and Savathun. And I don't quite have the full connection there, but we know it exists, right? Because that is how Savathun, or one of Savathun's minions, so to speak, is watching Zavala and corrupting him along the way. And so she is getting energy from his wavering faith and using it kind of against somehow, like I said, using that influence.
Yeah. We should probably have a link to the lore specifically, because it does have a different it's different looking at it and then analyzing who do you think the narrator is, from whose perspective this is. But at the beginning it says,
Right.
I push into my ossific den, and that word ossific means of or pertaining to bones.
Yeah.
And this viewer, this narrator, sees him looking over the side, and so from there's a clear vantage point from the Ahamkara bones where you would be able to look out even through the eye sockets, and
Right.
and it's pointing straight at Zavala. And the lore entry was split into 3 segments, and so that there was actually that second pause.
Yeah. I think those 3 segments, and I got this just through my own reading of it, but also reading a Reddit post on here, and gosh, I wish I had, but it was just such a rabbit hole, so I wish I could link to that person. If I can find it, I will get that to Sooltime so he can link
I'll
to
put
that
the link
Reddit
up.
post.
Just let me know.
But they were saying that potentially those 3 segments are past, present, and future. So that first segment was past, and then the second segment is what's going on now, currently, and that the last one is the future, like, so his future corruption. An interesting take on it. And the only other thing I wanted to bring up, because this was something that kind of came up in my mind as I was kind of researching this lore and reading all the background lore here, is in Destiny 1 we had the speaker who was kind of like possibly talking to, like, giving the message of the Traveler to us as Guardians. And then it's kind of turned into like, well, okay, the speaker is gone, and we kind of learned through the Red War campaign that the speaker didn't necessarily didn't necessarily have a conversation with the Traveler. He just felt the Traveler's power and spoke for him. But I wanted to, like, you just keep seeing this over and over again of Guardians in higher roles of this seeking the Traveler giving them kind of some active interaction. Zavala is looking for the Traveler to answer, or hoping when it reawoken after the Red War, like that it would start, the Traveler would start having a more active role in protecting the Guardians and protecting the city, and it seemed like the speaker was doing the same thing, but the Traveler's done nothing but have this passive, I feel like just had this passive role. It's like, here, I've given you the light, and I've done what I can do for you. I'm here, I've given you the light, but the rest is up to you, type of deal. You know, this, like, stop asking me for anything beyond, I've already given you all I'm going to give you, type of thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do either one of you get what I'm saying?
You get what you get.
Right. That it's just, I've given you what I can. I've given you this gift, but stop seeking more answers from me. Beyond me giving you this gift, you have to take what I've given you and use it to, and then you've got Zavala getting kind of corrupted by Savathun, and potentially making this I don't know, their faith gets wavered because they're seeking this active role from the Traveler, but the Traveler has never in in at least all the years that I've been playing and paying attention, had anything but beyond just a passive role of giving us the light and our powers that go along with it. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, Funny Bones in chat says it's the travelers saying, this is all I can do. I believe humankind to be the ones who can bear it the most effectively to combat darkness. In other words, the traveler has chosen humans and passed the torch to them, and now has been pretty passive.
Yeah, I mean, ever since. It's just like, hey, like we're all part of the light. I've given you this gift of the light. Obviously, we have threats to our existence. Use what I've given you to fight the fight, but stop seeking more from me. I've given you all I can give you. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. But and is this like Zavala? Getting back to Zavala, is this Zavala waveringness just because he's getting corrupted by Savathun? And of course there's a huge, once you start and I mean Savathun is almost like a separate Paracasual Destiny podcast spin-off lore segment, because then you have to start going into the Book of Sorrows.
Yeah,
and
it's easy to fall.
Those origins and so forth. So there's so much that you could say that
there's
is
a lot
probably
to it.
for another time, but it's also going to be interesting to see kind of where we are and how we're going to fight this fight beyond. But we need to Fractious Heart says, what even is the traveler? And we kind of don't even know. And I think I brought this up in a previous pod, early on, is like, is the traveler even good? Just because the traveler's given us these powers that technically are quote unquote light, is this good? Or, is it just, is it different, right? Because you think about the Fallen and us fighting the Fallen, and all the Fallen's doing is wanting the same thing that we want, and that is the traveler to protect us. So Funny Bone mentions Halo here. It says in Halo it's different because it's less mystical. Humanity was chosen by the previous guardian species long ago in the Halo universe. It's a very if nothing else, the the story behind this game is, I want to say, probably what keeps me in it most. The writing is fantastic. The stories are engaged. I throw on lore podcasts and go for long walks and just can't, it's amazing stuff. So yeah. And another part of the amazing part of the game is its music, and we have a whole nother segment here. Right?
Yeah, we'll try to keep it short since we're kind of running over time, but this week's Sounds of Destiny brought to you by the Paracasual Destiny Podcast. The Sounds of Destiny. Yeah, so this week I chose to introduce, because this is another deep topic that you could go on and on and on and on forever on, is the prequel to Destiny 1, the game. Yeah, 2 years prior to the release of Destiny 1, there was a prequel. It wasn't a video game prequel, it was a musical prequel. And the name of that project was called Music of the Spheres. And it was shortly after Bungie reached out to the famous Halo composer, Marty O'Donnell, to do a musical score for their concept of Destiny. And he came up with this concept of a musical prequel where the music would come out before the video game, and introduced people to the themes beforehand. So this goes back to 2010, 4 years before the release of Destiny 1. And so he got together with a colleague named Michael Salvatore, who is the sort of lead composer now of music for Destiny 2. But then they were collaborators. And then in 2011, they took on a famous musician named Paul McCartney to help them with this project. And they came up with this concept of Music of the Spheres, which was inspired by the concept of Musica Universalis, which is the idea that the planet's orbits resonate like music. And O'Donnell went into things like geomantic figures to come up with inspiration for the individual tracks. So this was an 8 piece composition, so it had like 8 movements. And I'll put the track listing up if I can find it here. Yeah, Music of the Sphere. So you have these 8 pieces of music that were done even before the release of Destiny 1. And there's a rich, sort of interesting history behind the release of this music and what happened with Marty O'Donnell and Bungie / Activision at the time. But the track list is starts off, track 1 is called The Path and coincides with the moon. Track 2 is The Union. Track 3 is called The Ruin. Track 4 is The Tribulation. And then you have The Rose. And track 6 is The Ecstasy. Track 7 is called The Prison. And track 8 is The Hope, or Earth. And so you had Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Sun, Earth. That corresponds to the 8 tracks. And so what happened was, before this was ever released, they at E3 in 2013, fast forward few years. So 2013, when E3 when Activision was going to release the big reveal for the upcoming Destiny game, they basically wiped out Marty O'Donnell's music from the trailer and used like a different weird voiceover and different music feel altogether. Of course, Marty O'Donnell threw a fit and was very vocal on social media about it and started an internal argument with Bungie and Activision. And from what I've read, I mean, the court proceedings have been public. From what I read, he didn't get a much support from Bungie's then their management, and so I think he basically just stopped working, but showed up, and they fired him because of this. He would just show up and not do anything, and out of protest, and then they fired him, and he sued, and he won, but the downside of all this was that Music of the Spheres was just unpublished. But some of it had leaked out, parts of it were leaking out, and some hobbyists, in particular a guy named OS Epsilon, began to take bits and pieces that he found, the leaked bits of it, and started to put together a definitive sort of a release of the 8 pieces to this. And of course, Marty O'Donnell, by this time, you're fast forwarding, Destiny's been released, and of course they used when Destiny came out, they used sort of the themes from Music of the Spheres, as we'll hear in just a moment. In Destiny 1, you can hear some of the themes, the musical themes being used, and of course Paul McCartney did the last track, which is called The Hope, is a McCartney composition that he collaborated with them. He also collaborated on other tracks musically as well. But of course, it's the famous song that came out, which is like the Destiny 1 theme song, called Hope for the Future. So O'Donnell got involved with these fans that were trying to reconstruct it, and he would say things like, "Oh, you're so close to what the original would have sounded like." And then he endorsed, I think he started uploading stuff to like SoundCloud. And then Bungie started, by this time, what are we like in 2017, I think, Bungie issued a cease and desist, and then they backed off and said, we'll release it free for everybody. And so I think they were kind of appeasing O'Donnell at that point, and fans were very vocal about it as well. And eventually Bungie released Music of the Spheres, the actual music, and what would have come out had there not been all that kerfuffle earlier. So I'd like to play the first track, which is called The Path, from Music of the Spheres, a little bit of it here, just to hear the intro of it, what it sounds like. So let me call that up. This is The Traveler. I'm sorry, it's called The Path, or it refers to the moon. See if you recognize any of the themes in it. So you can hear this is like really orchestrated, and actually the other 7 tracks are very similar in just it's all orchestrated, but really beautiful gems. And if you're a fan of Halo's music or the music of Destiny, this is where the Destiny themes all started. This is where the music for Destiny started, was in this. In fact, Marty O'Donnell has actually uploaded his piano ideas that preceded this, like the 2010, him sitting down at the piano, as a playlist on YouTube. He's very open and sharing. And the video portion is his commentary, which is really interesting. We'll link to it in the description of this podcast. Any musicians out there who are interested in the process of writing music for video games should definitely check that out, as he talks about the process of coming up with ideas for the music, for video game music, in particular for Destiny. Now, what I'd like to do is, let's take that off. I'd like to play actual Destiny soundtrack. This is Destiny 1 vanilla soundtrack, and this is the opening theme to the original soundtrack, called The Traveler. And see if you can recognize the musical horn line that we heard at the beginning of The Path is right at the front here. Those 3 notes, right? Pretty amazing. And this will bring back memories to veteran players for sure. Listen to a little bit of this. Wow, that gives me chills right there. So, so I encourage you to go out and listen to Music of the Spheres, and you'll recognize some of the themes that you've heard. I think even Michael Salvatore goes back and grabs some of those original themes, even in some of the music for Destiny 2, which is already an old game now. It's a real history lesson, but it's also like the lore, a rabbit hole. For example, that signature horn line that's in the Path and later in the Traveler for Destiny 1 is said to be composed originally on piano by Paul McCartney. When you start reading the forums and people chime in that they know this stuff, you never really know, and that's what kind of makes it fun. I would trust Marty O'Donnell, his sort of primary source stuff is pretty trustworthy, I would think. But yeah, so that's Music of the Spheres, and I'll link to a playlist for it in the description.
Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but I definitely got goosebumps. Just that, I could see in my mind and hear the speaker giving us the background and showing the visions of Guardians first landing on Mars, I believe it is. It just amazing stuff.
Yep.
Amazing.
And that about wraps it up, I think, for this week.
Another great podcast.
Any closing thoughts?
I am looking forward to hopping into the Festival of the Lost and grabbing some of those newly reigning cipher decoders. I don't honestly care that much about getting like the perfect role of either the Braytech werewolf or the horror story. I think I have both of those still in my vault, if I remember right. And according to, again, the Twitterverse, those are still pretty good roles. So even if I don't get anything new or get those to drop as anything new, I'm just kind of excited to do it. It's fun. It's something different, right? It's something different to do while we're waiting for Beyond Light to drop, and I'm excited.
Me too.
I'm excited to go in and play. I'm excited for what's coming. We obviously love this game, or we wouldn't be doing this podcast in the first place. So,
well, let's end it so we can go play the game.
Absolutely.
You're here.
Well, at this time, we'd like to thank everyone for tuning in to episode 13 of the Paracasual Destiny Podcast. I'm Sooltime, and I was joined by Salliebug and Greenstego, and a shout out to Fractious Heart and Funny Bone for keeping us going in the chat. We always appreciate that. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next Saturday. Bye.